Welcome to Daisha Breedlove Presents. Now, for those of you that are new to the show, every week I like to touch base on inspirational topics with inspirational guests who can help make your life a better one. So, my guest today is an actor, director, and a well known acting coach named Gary Imhoff. Now, our topic today is not only going to be discussing how to be a successful actor in the industry, but also we're going to get to know him and also hear about his journey in the industry and as an actor. So let's meet him today. Gary, thank you so much for joining
Well,
us.
thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure
Yes,
to be here.
it's a pleasure to have you. You inspire a lot of people around the world, so it was good to just kind of get to know you a little bit more. And while everybody else is telling you about themselves, let's hear about Gary. So I was excited to have you on the show today.
Pleasure.
Yes, thanks for coming. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, Gary, you are a influential actor, teacher, dad, and husband who now guides others on that path. But for those who are not familiar with you, tell us where you're from originally and when was it that Gary knew he wanted to be an entertainer?
All right. Well, I'll try to give you the short version. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin,
Mhm.
lived there till I was 10. That's actually where I discovered acting. I'm one of those blessed people. I knew at the age of 4 what I wanted to do. I produced
Really?
a play on our doorstep when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
It helped that the next door neighbor's mother was the sort of star of the local community theater. So she was into theater and she was in the show with me at
Mm.
4. But then in 5th grade, I always did every play, every musical. I'm also a singer I could get involved in. And then in 5th grade, I starred in the Mikado. And the
Mm.
high school did all the sets and all the costumes and all the makeup. And we were very pampered. And I went, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. So I made
Wow.
that decision. And then my break came in high school. I started studying voice at the New England Conservatory of Music, so I was always working towards this goal of Broadway. That was my first goal.
Mm.
And I then went there for 2 years in college. And then at the end of the summer of my second year, they held open auditions for Godspell, cast replacements in Godspell, which
Wow.
Boston was the first out of New York company of Godspell. I went, waited in line behind 450 people for 10 hours and had my first audition. 6 callbacks later, signed my first Broadway contract to do Godspell in Boston.
Wow.
Then I did Godspell in Boston and went on from there.
That's so inspiring. So you not only did you come all the way from Wisconsin to the East Coast.
Yes, we moved when I was 10 to Boston, which is where my mother was from,
um,
just outside of Boston. So,
wow, but you also waited in line behind 400 people and got the part.
and I got the part six
So
callbacks later.
so that just 6 calls back later. So that
Yeah.
just shows just perseverance and determination. Anything is possible.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I have to say, a neighbor called me up, and she knew because I was the star of the plays and musicals in high school, and she knew what I did and what my dream was. And she called up. She said, "I read in the paper they're having open auditions for Godspell. You should go." And I panicked. So everybody understands this is
Yeah.
not an easy thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
panicked, and I tried to find every reason not to go to that audition. I went, well, I guess I should go, and I trudged into Boston all by myself. Got in line behind. It was every type person you can imagine because it was an open call. Very unusual that it happens on Broadway
Oh
that they
wow.
do
And
that.
not only you went by yourself,
I
how
went all
brave
by
of you.
myself, all by myself.
Oh, wow, that's a
Yeah.
very inspiring story. Okay, so when exactly did you move to Hollywood and did you come to Hollywood alone?
Yes, I did. Yes, I went to New York. They took me to New York with the Godspell show, and I did a number of shows on and off Broadway for about 4 years while I was in New York. And then my manager, I'd gotten a manager. I was working a lot and a lot in commercials because
Wow.
I was a kid who looked very, very, very young.
Hmm.
So I was really desirable in those years because if you're over 18, but you can play younger than 18,
Yeah.
they don't have to work with the child labor laws, and you can work. They can work you much harder, which they did.
Hmm.
And so my manager called, and I had expected to be out of town with the show for 8 months, and it closed out of town for legal reasons, actually.
Hmm.
And she called me and said, "I have a client who just got a big series in Hollywood, and I need to find people who will take his auditions because he's now exclusive to the show.
Ah,
And you're like him. Do you want to go out to Hollywood?" I went, "It's great. I plan to be out of town for 8 months anyway."
yeah.
Came out to Hollywood all by myself. Never been here. Never visited. Never
Wow.
saw the place.
See,
Came
that's,
from New York City to Hollywood. You cannot find a more opposite place
oh, yeah.
than Hollywood for New York City. I thought it was in a more a foreign land than anywhere I'd visited in Europe.
Mm. So what would you say that transition was like compared to the
It
East Coast
was
versus the West Coast?
really hard
Yeah.
because everything was unfamiliar.
Uh-huh.
Everything. The weather was unfamiliar. The people were unfamiliar. The terrain. I went, where is the city?
Yeah.
You know, in New York City, when you live there,
Uh-huh.
it's like you get on the train and ride it. And I don't mean that, I mean that literally and figuratively. Like
Mhm.
there's an energy.
Oh,
You
yeah.
walk down the street will push you. The
Oh,
people
yeah.
on the street will
Everybody's
push you.
straightforward,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So you get on that train and ride it. I came out here and I went, where's the train? Where's the train? But eventually I discovered that you can find anything you want in Los Angeles, anything. First
Uh-huh.
of all, you got the mountains, you got the sea, you got
Yeah.
the desert, you got all this,
Uh-huh.
but you can find any group of people that you want as long as you look for them.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to create your life whichever way you want to create it in Los Angeles than it
Mhm.
was in New York.
Yeah, because it's more diverse, you would
Yeah,
say.
in New York, you kind of got to do it New York's way. In
Mhm.
LA, it's like, yeah, whatever.
It's like more freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
kind of the old pioneer spirit is still kicking around here.
Yeah.
So so it was an adjustment,
Mm.
but the business wasn't as much an adjustment as it was the terrain and the people and the whole
Mhm.
culture.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, yeah, that's very interesting because I did hear that it's tougher to make it in the East Coast. And I thought if you can make it in California, you can make it anywhere. But I'm like, no, if you can make it in New York City, you can literally live anywhere.
I
So,
guess that's probably right.
yeah.
New York City would be proud of that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I guess that kind of answers my next question, what the transition was like coming from the Midwest to Hollywood, because being from Indiana myself, which is the Midwest, I know it definitely took some adjusting and thickening of skin to kind of mentally prepare for this industry, you know? So tell us what that experience was like for you.
Well, I actually had that same experience you had in Hollywood, I had in New York.
Ah,
So that was when I had done amateur acting all the way through high school and even early college in summer theaters and things.
yeah.
And it was the first, Godspell was the first time I did the show as a profession. And it was great in Boston because that company of actors, they all came from New York
Oh,
and they
yeah.
were a family because they weren't from Boston.
Yeah.
I was from Boston. And it was just like doing amateur theater, but getting paid for it, getting paid handsomely for it.
Yeah.
Then they took me to the New York company and it was completely the opposite.
Mm.
I was with a group of people that had been doing the show too long. They were all sour. They all hated each other. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
I actually decided at the end of the year to quit acting and become a doctor. And I
Really?
didn't act for the next 2
So it
years.
was that traumatic for
It
you?
was that traumatic. I was a small town kid. We lived outside of Boston, so I was pretty much a small town kid in outside of Milwaukee and outside of Boston,
Yeah.
hitting the big city.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was a little young, and it was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And so I went to become a doctor and then decided, no, I have to go back into acting. And I never looked back after that.
Yeah. So
But it
what
was a tough transition, I have to say.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. So I guess it's the complete opposite for me. I'm coming from the Midwest to California. You went from the Midwest to the big
To
city.
be, yep.
So I know that was definitely tough. So what would you say got you back into acting after that
Well,
experience?
I turned down a Broadway show actually 2 weeks after I went. I was going to Harvard Summer School, and my manager called, and Hal Prince wanted me to be the understudy to Candide on Broadway, which is the lead of a new musical.
Mhm.
And I turned it down, and I didn't act in anything. Even I went to Princeton to do pre-med, and they wanted me to
Oh,
be
so
in
you
their
actually
place.
took the initial
Oh, I
steps to
did. Oh, I
start
went
being
to
a
Harvard
doctor.
Summer School for chemistry and then to Princeton to become pre-med. And
Wow.
I did a year of pre-med and I turned everything down, including shows they wanted me to do there. I said, nope, I'm not going to act. And they got very clever. I was part of the counseling group. I like working with people. And they said, we want to do an evening of skits based on being a student at Princeton University. And I was a transfer student, which is a little bit like being a Martian on planet Earth. Being a
Yeah.
transfer in the Ivy Leagues is tough.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, if it's going to help the students adjust and I'll direct the evening and I'll help write.
Yeah.
And I wrote a 10-minute comedy monologue about what it was like being a transfer student at Princeton. I got a standing ovation. I walked off the stage, which was 4 feet off the ground, and I never hit the ground. I walked into the pre-medical advisor's office the next morning. I said, I got to go back. He said, I know, I was there. So then I finished out that year and I came back into the business.
Wow, it's so funny how certain things just lead us right back into the full
Yeah.
circle of what we're initially meant to be doing.
Well, it was a good thing for me too, because in high school I was the top scholar male in my class,
Mhm.
second only to a girl who was my best friend. And I won a lot of awards, a lot of intelligence awards in science and math and the Harvard Book Prize. I won all these things.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher who said, "You're wasting your brain going into the arts." And that never left me. And
Wow.
so there was always that pull.
So it's like she knew that you were meant to be an entertainer.
Well, no, she went the other way. "You're wasting your brain going into the arts." She said, "Follow your brain." So
Ah,
that gave me this conflict.
yeah.
And I was really glad that I went away to be pre-med for a year and a half because I got it out of my system and I went, okay, that is definitely not the life for me. I was right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went back in the ups and downs of this business, I never looked back.
Wow.
I was happy to not have that, oh, wonder what would have happened if.
Yeah.
And I got that out of
Shoulda,
my
woulda,
system.
coulda.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, that's
good.
the worst, right? When
Yeah, it
you
was
be like,
good.
oh, what if it went a different direction? But
Exactly.
like I said, it's always like a full circle that puts us right back on the path
That's true.
that we're meant to be on.
That's true. It's
So,
like I knew. I knew when I was 4. I knew when I was in 5th grade, and then I really knew when I
yeah.
went and explored another choice.
And it's funny you say that. I agree. Like somehow if we look back, there's certain glimpse, even as a kid, that we remember like, oh, I can see why that's where I'm meant to be today because I was performing at a
Yeah.
kid or I was interested in like certain little things. So you definitely got to pay attention to the signs
Yeah,
because
that's true.
it's not far from
It's
that.
true.
Okay, so my next question is, did you take classes to prepare for your acting career? If so, what would you say where did you go, and what would you say your main takeaways were from attending acting school?
I not only took classes, well, I didn't take classes at the beginning. I was a natural entertainer, and I
Mm,
did okay on Broadway because I was a singer and I could get away with what acting I sort of naturally knew.
uh-huh.
But when I came to Hollywood, I went, uh-oh, I'm going to be on film and television, and it's going to be a tight close-up, and I really have to learn how to act. I
Yeah,
really need to learn this craft.
it's different from theater.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, in the musicals especially that I was in, I could entertain, and my natural ability sort of made my way. But
Yeah.
when I came out here, I said I got to get serious. I went to a few classes, and I landed at a place called the Beverly Hills Playhouse with Milton Katselas, who was a
Yeah,
very
so
well-known
funny.
teacher.
I
He was
was
probably
there.
the best teacher in Hollywood at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied with him for 27 years.
Wow.
Now it turns out I ended up sliding over into the teaching realm, so I taught there for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that class was extraordinarily important to me because he taught me how to act.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me the craft of acting.
And doesn't he have his own books now?
Yeah, he does have a couple of books,
Yeah.
and he's not alive anymore. He passed away in
Mm-hmm.
2010. But he was a tough teacher, old school. There was not a day in the class that I wasn't a little bit afraid
Yeah.
and nervous and that kind of thing. I try to teach differently than he does now, but he was an amazing man, a brilliant man,
Mm-hmm.
and he really taught me the nuts and bolts of acting.
Amazing.
And that changed my life and changed the way I sing.
Oh, wow. So what would you say your main takeaways was from attending school? Like, would you say training is mandatory?
Training of one sort or another is mandatory. There are people who have become stars and never technically studied acting. I
Uh-huh.
shouldn't say that being an acting teacher, but it's true.
Yeah.
But they studied life, or they studied other actors, or Elizabeth Taylor never technically studied acting, but she says, I learned how to act when I worked with Montgomery Clift. She
Mm.
said when he was in a tough situation, he would actually sweat. She said, I didn't know you could do that. And so
Wow.
I would learn by example.
Yeah.
And so you have to study somehow. One of the things I tell my students, if you want to be a brilliant actor, study life.
Mhm.
Study why those things happen. Why did those two people get together? Why did your parents have that argument? Why are you feeling so bad today? What happened?
Mhm.
And learn those things because those are going to be part of your tools. Your understanding of life is going to be part of your tools.
Yeah.
But I believe studying an acting class is very important because it'll speed your progress.
Yeah.
You'll run into all kinds of situations where the stakes are not as high because you're in an acting class and
Oh,
you
yeah.
figure out how to solve those,
Yeah.
and you'll learn techniques that will come in handy all the way through
Yeah.
your progress.
For sure. And also I would say like me attending your acting class would be like it teaches you also that acting is also a business. You're a business,
That's
know?
true.
So it teaches you like the business side and how to handle yourself professionally
Absolutely.
as an entertainer. So I would definitely say that. But I guess that kind of goes into my next question is, would you say talent or training is more important?
Well, that's an interesting question for me because talent is something that's very hard to define.
Mm.
And I have the musical director of my musical acting class says, don't think about talent. Don't worry about talent. Worry about craft. It's a
Mm.
craft. I believe anybody can learn how to act as
Yeah.
long as they have enough desire
Mhm.
and they stick to it.
Yeah.
Anybody can learn how to be a really good actor.
Mhm.
So talent is an indefinable thing, you know. And I've seen people in acting class who are as talented or more talented, apparently, than people who are working.
Mm,
So part of what you want to learn how to do in an acting class is not just learn how to act, but learn how, as you said, learn how to behave in the business. Elia Kazan said this business is 20% talent and 80% getting along with people. So,
yeah.
learn how to work in a group, learn how to support each other, learn how to
Be a team player. Yeah, like
exactly
you said.
learn
Yeah.
learn what to do when the chips are down.
Mm-hmm.
So acting class contributes to all those kinds of things.
Yeah. So I guess that answers the question. Training is more important than talent.
Well, yes, I would say that. I would
Yeah.
say that because there's some very talented people with terrible attitudes and they don't work.
Yeah, that's true. And all it
And
takes is that one time for you to kind of get blacklisted in this industry. I've noticed
yeah,
that too.
yeah.
For sure. Okay. So my next question is if you could name the top 5 traits that you yourself have not only modeled, but have observed being around other well-known entertainers that have made them successful, that has made them successful and actually win, what would you say they are?
The first one I would have to say is from Muhammad Ali. Keep your eyes on the prize. That was an
Mm,
expression he used to say all the time.
so stay focused.
Well, stay focused on the goal because everybody has a dream.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know if you're looking to become an actor, you know what your dream is. You want to be an actor, or you
Mm-hmm.
want to be a singer, or you want to be an entertainer.
Yeah.
But don't never forget that dream.
Mm-hmm.
That dream is the carrot, at the end of the stick
Yeah.
for the donkey or the horse. And keep your eyes on that. Don't get so mired in your day job or in your serving job or whatever it is to support your art. Remember, every day you go to work, you're investing time and earning money so that you can invest in your career.
Mm-hmm.
The toughest thing about this business is you never know when it's going to hit.
Yeah.
You never know how it's going to hit. You never know when it's going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
You got to be prepared.
yeah, be prepared, but don't ever lose sight of that dream and don't give up. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first one.
Yeah, that's a good one because it's like those daily small steps, like you said, lead up to that prize that you
Yep.
you want at the end. So
Yep.
sometimes different things in life, like a job, or can kind of take us off the path, and we lose sight of that.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
like you said, just stay focused
Yeah, you can't lose sight of it. Keep your eyes on the prize. That's the phrase I like to use.
for sure.
Second one is
Okay.
become the best actor that you can be. Now
Mm,
you do that 2 ways. We already talked about it to some degree.
yeah.
But study life. If you don't have the money to go to acting class, then go to free acting classes online. There's many of them.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then study life and read up on acting. There are very inexpensive books, or even in the library, if people remember what those are,
Yeah.
that you can read books on acting.
Mm-hmm.
Both not just technical studies on acting. Sandy Meiser has a book. Uta Hagen has a book that are very good. But read biographies and autobiographies of stars, because a lot of times they talk about that.
Yeah.
They talk about acting in those books. But if you can, get in a really good acting class. Get in an acting class that pushes you, but is also free enough that you're willing to experiment and explore and not being afraid to fail.
Yeah.
That's the second one, become the best actor. Oh, also, my teacher taught, and I believe it, technique is anything that works.
Mm,
So if you find you're studying in a class that teaches a certain technique, I don't teach a technique. I know all the techniques, and I pick and choose according to what's going to work with each actor.
yeah.
But if you're studying in a class that teaches a technique and it's not quite working for you, try another one.
Mm-hmm.
Amy Adams says she was released into her talent when she finally found a teacher who said it's all imagination. None of it is personal.
Wow.
And she was released into her talent. We all know what happened after that.
Right. So there's not just one way. Like
No,
there's other ways to go about
no.
it. And it's so funny you say that. I was just listening to an interview with Oprah yesterday, and she was saying if when you get a no or a closed door, that's just life's way of saying try another way.
Yep.
So that's
Absolutely.
to hear it a second time is like okay. So it's never just no. Just find a different
Yeah,
direction.
and whatever techniques work for one person aren't going to work for the other person.
Yeah.
So, or may not work under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
So you want to be collecting a whole basket full of techniques
Hmm.
that you can use under any circumstance.
Yeah.
The third thing I would say is you are the creator of your career. Don't
Mm,
think somebody else is going to do it. You
yeah.
are always going to be in charge. Can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
So my first manager I ever had was a great manager. She was from New York. Her name was Selma Rubin. She's not alive anymore. She told me a story. She was sitting in the vice president of William Morris's office in New York.
Hmm.
And he's on the phone like this. And he's going, look, I've done everything I can. I can't get you in on this project. Listen, I have somebody in my office. I can't talk to you anymore, okay? Okay, I'll talk to you later. We'll get another one. Okay, bye. Hangs up. And she says, young actors, it's got to be tough. He says, young actors, that's Al Pacino. Al Pacino, when he was a star, was pushing his agent really far to get him in on this project. And when the agent said no, Al picked up the phone and called the writer or the director or the producer or somebody knew who wanted one of those people to get himself in there. And that was a really good lesson I learned early in my career, because you're in charge. Don't expect that everybody else is doing the job for you. In the end, you got to do the job. And in the early stages, when you don't have an agent, you don't have a manager, you need to spend a lot of your day's time and energy in producing opportunities.
Creating your own content, which a lot of people are doing nowadays.
Exactly. And keep creating in one way or another, but know that you're in charge and you've got to make it happen.
Yeah, you're in control of your destiny.
Right, exactly. The fourth thing is don't audition. Now, I know that sounds funny. Sounds like I'm saying don't go to auditions. No, go to auditions, but don't audition when you're in an audition. It's not about them judging you. It's not about, ooh, what do they want? It's about, what would you do if you already had this part? In other words, give yourself the permission to own the part as you would if you were shooting. And make all the choices that you would do, knowing that's going to be the best job in that part that you can do. And then when you go in, you're not being judged. At least don't take that point of view. Of course you're being judged, but don't take that point of view. Take the point of view is, I'm so lucky to have another opportunity to act, to do what I love to do. Don't look at it as an audition. If you do that, you'll kill yourself. And then when you audition, go in, do the best job you can, leave, or make your self-tape, pick the best self-tape you can, and then leave and forget about it.
Because otherwise you'll get all stressed out. It'll take over your day. I don't know if they wanted me to do this. But also, I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like when everybody goes into an audition, whether that's for a modeling audition or an acting audition, anything, you're so stuck on thinking about what would they want me to do versus having a perspective like, this part is mine. They obviously called me into the room for a reason. So if you go in there thinking that you already have it, you're going to manifest that reality.
Yeah, and you're going to make the best choices. You're going to make the choices that excite you the most and the choices that make the most sense to you. And you're going to go in and kill that part. Now, they may or may not choose your version. But if you go in and kill that part the way you know how to kill that part, they'll remember you. And if it's not this one, they'll remember you for something else.
And like you said, it's not always just forget about it, because sometimes they don't call you back because they may have you in mind for something else, or there's just certain stakes to where things just change all the time in this industry, I realized.
And there's an article by Amy, and I can't remember her last name, but she now sells her expertise online to actors. She was a casting director at HBO for 15 years. And she wrote an article, which I have in my computer. It says, the 26 reasons you didn't get the part that you have no control over. Things like, you were the first person to read and they weren't ready. You were the last person to read and they were not present. You reminded the director of his ex-wife and they're in a big custody battle. All kinds of, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too blonde, you're not blonde enough. You're the wrong ethnicity. There's so many reasons. So if you go in and give your best effort and make your best performance as if you would if you shot that part, you will. I tell my students, every audition is money in the bank. You just never know when it's going to mature.
Yeah, that's a good concept.
And the fifth one, then we're done with this question. The fifth one is, how do I put this? Don't ever lose your sense of joy and play in the work. If it gets too serious, you got to take a break. Serious makes you rigid and solid and afraid to take chances. The actor has to be willing to express the most wild notion, the craziest idea.
I call it the inner child.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all got into this business as a kid because we loved to play, do a play, and we played when we did a play. And I looked up the derivation of the word play, and screenplay has the same word in it. And it means to risk and exercise. So with a certain joy, you want to be willing to try anything. And don't ever lose the sense of joy. And if you do, go golf. Go take a vacation. Do something. Go run so that you can get that sense of joy back. Because there's nothing like being able to pursue your dream. If you're holding on to that prize, like I said in the beginning, and you're pursuing your dream, there's no joy like that. There's not a day in my life that I have ever felt like I was working.
Because you're doing what you love.
I'm having a ball.
And also, I would say, long as you have a dream, that just keeps you alive because
That's
you're
ab-
striving towards something daily.
absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like a lot of people, they life becomes miserable to them when they don't have anything to aim for. They don't believe in a dream or don't even have a dream, you know? So
That's
I
right.
feel like we all have an assignment here, and finding out what your assignment is and what sparks that joy or inner child in you is what's going to like make life worth
That's
living.
right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, so thank you for sharing those 5 traits. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the end, but I have a couple more questions before you
Yep.
leave us today. Okay, so you are also known as a voice actor in the popular fairy tale Thumbelina. Now, would you say that was your favorite role? If not, what was?
Well, I don't know that I have a favorite, but I have 4 favorites. Can I
Okay,
give you 4 favorites?
sure.
Thumbelina, Prince Cornelius, being able to sing Barry Manilow's love song "Let Me Be Your Wings"
Uh-huh.
was, and work with Jodie Benson, who played Little Mermaid, and she played Thumbelina, and all
Wow.
the other stars in that movie. And we all worked together. It was great.
Wow.
But also, I played Harry Osborn and the Green Goblin in Spider-Man the Animated Series, the one from the 90s. And
Wow.
that was one of the great joys of my life because I used to go to work with Mark Hamill from Star Wars and all different kind
Mm.
of people, and we just had a ball.
Mm-hmm.
But I have 2 other jobs that I
Amazing.
had that were extraordinary. I had the joy and the extreme pleasure to work with Lucille Ball from I
Oh,
Love Lucy.
wow.
I
I
I
love
played
Lucille Ball.
I
I used to love
played
that
Fred
show.
Silverman, who was the head of NBC at the
Mm-hmm.
time, as if he were a 16-year-old running the network. And we surprised Lucy at her home a little. This is a true story. They surprised Lucy and asked her to come back out of retirement and become a producer and a writer of series at NBC. And
Wow.
I got to play Fred Silverman, and she adopted me
Oh, she
for
died.
for about 2 months. We were very
Really?
close. I went to her house many, many times. She
Wow.
had me speak at her class at Cal State Northridge. She invited my mother to Thanksgiving at her house. My mother came out for the shooting of the show.
Oh,
And so I had the joy of working with her and becoming really good friends with her for a couple of months.
what an
It was
honor.
very special. And then the
Mhm.
other one, I played opposite Milton Berle, who most people don't even remember anymore. He was the first major star in television, a huge stand-up comedian and
Mm,
actor. And I played in a pilot called Moscow and Vine. It was
mm.
basically Chico and the Man, if you remember that series, goes to Russia. I played a Russian kid who came into this old man in his music store, and I wanted him to make the new music. And so getting to work with those 2 icons
Oh, that's
in show
huge.
business was very special.
Yeah, and I can see that you love what you do because again, when you love what you do, it's not like working.
That's right.
So, not only did you have one, you had a couple.
That's right.
That's amazing. Okay, so my next question is, how would you say you handled or overcame criticism or the no's before getting the yeses? Because obviously, as we discussed already briefly, there's a lot of no's in this industry before you get your yeses. And like you said, you never know when you're going to get your next break. So how would you say maintaining just forgetting about the audition is what kind of helped you keep that perspective? Or what would you say? How would you overcome
That's
the
part of it.
no's?
In the early stages, it wasn't easy, because it was personal to me. Then I learned a few things. I learned what we talked about before, which is if you go in and you audition and you have a chance to act, then that takes the sting out of do they call, do they not call, because you just gave a performance
Yeah.
and you feel great about that
It's like
performance
you
and you move
emptied
on to the
yourself. You
next.
gave them
Yeah.
everything.
The second thing is you my wife has a great expression. She worked in commercial real estate. She's also a stand-up comedian, but she worked in commercial real estate. And there's an expression she had in sales, which is every no makes you that much closer to a yes.
Mm,
So she would get excited when somebody said no
mm-hmm.
because it's like, oh, I'm one step closer to the next yes.
Yeah.
So if actors can take that viewpoint, then it just flips the script
Yeah.
on all the idea that you're being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, then the third thing that I really discovered was we don't give a bronze medal or a silver medal in acting,
Yeah.
but you may have won the bronze or silver medal. You may have been second or third in that auditioning process.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could call up your parents and say, hey, I won the bronze. I didn't win the gold yet, but I won the bronze. They'd go, oh, honey, keep going.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're like Vegas. It's winner takes all and everybody else loses.
Yeah.
And so if you can take that viewpoint of, well, I didn't make the gold this time. I
Mm-hmm.
was second in the race or
Mm-hmm.
second in the
You're
challenge.
closer
Yeah.
to number one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's amazing. Okay, so yeah, so you would say basically just having that perspective is really just going to keep you
It's
going
all about a viewpoint.
because it's almost like you're getting the nose out the way.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Okay, so My last question is, if you could leave, and you gave us so much feedback, it's appreciated. If you could leave any future artists with any piece of advice, and just summarize kind of all that we talked about today, what would you say?
I would say believe in your dream and never give up. You're doing what you love. If you do what you love, it will lead you to your answer. I've had actors who start as actors and they become directors. In fact, one really well-known and very hot director right now is a girl who came to my class as a singer and an actor, and now she's a big director. I've had people come to my class discover that they're writers, and a lot of actors are working. So don't give up. Always pursue your dream and understand how lucky you are that you know what you want to do
Hmm.
and that you have the capability to do it. Celebrate that every day. Fill yourself up with that joy that I'm doing what I love to do. How lucky am I?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm gonna pitch Gary's classes just because he's such an amazing teacher. He also has amazing classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, which is the class that I'm actually in. But we also have an open class coming up. So if you guys want to check that out, it's free. You can come get a feel of what we do in the class and what the class kind of consists of. So I'll attach all that at the bottom of the screen so you guys could
Nice.
check it out. But is there anything else we should be on the lookout for, Gary? That you have up and coming or that you're working on?
Yes, yes. I am directing. I've won 5 Best Director awards in theater, and I'm directing a piece, a 2-character piece for The Fringe. It's called. We're gonna call it a shorter title, Late Sunday. Dot dot dot. The actual title is Late Sunday Afternoon, Early Sunday Evening, and it's a 2-character play about a grandmother and her granddaughter, and well, it's a 3-character play with 2 actors. Let's tease you with that. And it's a coming of age story with a twist.
Amazing. Okay, so tell everybody where we can find you, how we can keep up and find the play and everything that you're doing. And
I'm not going to have all my handles, but I'll have Deja attach them below.
yeah.
But I'm on Twitter. I have a website, GaryImhoff.net.
Hmm.
Um, I am on Instagram. I think it's Imhoff Works. Well,
Yeah,
you'll
I'm like,
put
I
it
don't think
down.
he runs that page, but I'll touch
And I'm
everything.
on LinkedIn, and I have 1 business site on Facebook and 2 personal sites on Facebook. So you can reach
Amazing.
me all over the place.
Amazing. And like I said, I will attach all of Gary's information at the bottom of the screen so you guys can follow him, check it out, attend one of his classes if you prefer. But that wraps it up for Daisha Breedlove Presents. And I will see you next week with another inspirational episode. Thank you so much, Gary, for joining us. And I can't wait to see the rest of the amazing stuff that you are coming up
Well, thank you. This is
that
fun.
this going to do. Thanks for joining us. See you next week. Ciao.
Excellent.